Hey there Titans, in this video we'll talk about loops in Titan Web Action Flow. Alright, so the loop provides us a way to loop over three main elements in Titan Web. We have the power table, repeated strip, and a variable. One thing to think about before we get into loops is that most of the things that the loop provides you with, specifically when it comes to tables and to repeated strips, you can do with conditions. So if you want to, let's say, set a background color on a specific row or a specific cell, or you want to run conditions on specific values that come back to the table or to a repeated strip, you do not need to use loops. Any condition on the table or on the page can handle it. Loops needs to be used only when you don't have any other solution to what you're trying to achieve. It's very hard to find something with a table or with a repeated strip to use with a loop. Loops are very useful when it comes to when you want to create many-to-many relationships, and some very specific use cases with table and repeated strip. Another thing to keep in mind is that you do not want to run a loop over many elements on a table or repeated strip. Or if you're running a loop with a push to Salesforce, you don't want to run over too many pushes, because once you get to 20, it will stop pushing to Salesforce. So another thing to keep in mind, if you loop over too many elements in a table or in a repeated strip, it's just going to make your project run slower. All right, so once we're done with the caveats, let me show you how you can use it. So let's say, and you can run a loop from any condition. In this instance, I'm just going to do it from a button. So I have here a power table that brings back some accounts, and I can go ahead in my action flow and search for a loop element, and I can see three things that comes with the loop: the loop, continue, and break. And we will cover these real quick. So first thing, I can choose what I want to loop over. In my instance, it's going to be the account table. It can be looped over, and I'll show you an instance with a variable. And loops on tables and repeated strips are very similar, and I'll show you this in just a second. So I'll loop over the account table, and let's insert this node, and then I have two nodes here for each element in the loop, and on finish will run when the loop finish executing, and for each it's an action basically that I want to take for each row in the table in this instance, or it will be for each row in the repeated strip. Okay, so let's start real simple, and what I will do here is I'll show a toast message, and I can, since the loop is over a table, each iteration will give you the instance of that specific row. So the table also gives you a value and an index. Whenever it comes to tables and repeated strips, it's not really necessary, because that iteration will be a specific row in the table or in the repeated strip. So what I will show here is, let's say, the account name, which is just a cell in a row of my table. So I'll just show toast, and let's just run a quick preview here, and I'll click the button, and I see only one. I was expecting to see everything, but I got only one. And the reason for this is that we didn't use the continue. So what we want to do is, every time we want to continue running the loop, I'll click continue, and you want to go to the continue node. So loop continue, and I'll refresh this and run, and now I get everything in my table. Now let's do something fun with this. Let's say we want to have a condition here, and I'll say if, and again, we're in the loop, so every time we iterate through it, we will get a specific row. And I'll go to the account number. Let's say I'll go to the account table account number, and I'll say if it's not empty, then what I want to happen here is, let's say, table interactivity, and I want to say let's do select row, and I'll say select my table element. I'll hit next and insert, and I'll say continue. We don't need to show message. I'll hit apply and save, and run this. Now once I run my loop, it will select everything that the account number is not empty. But notice this, right here is all my account numbers are, everything is filtered by account number, so it stopped over here when there is no more account numbers. But if it was mixed, then it will only select a few and stop. And the reason for this is that even if it's not empty in the else, even if it is empty in the else, we want to continue the loop so we can continue checking for the rest of the rows. So this will be a correct implementation of what we're doing here. And the onFinish, basically what it will give us is a way to run any logic or functionality we want to run whenever the loop is finished. So right here, what we will do is just show a message. We'll say loop done and save, apply. Let's refresh this real quick. And my button jumped to the left. We'll run it, and whenever the loop is done, it will tell me loop is finished. And again, you could use this a much clever way. Let's talk about the break. What the break element will give you is whenever you have reached a point where you don't want the loop to continue, you want to stop and you don't want to run any more iterations on that loop. So let's say when I get to the account number CD6, I want to break out of the loop. So what we can do here, and again, this is just a simple demonstration, and I'll say account number, let's do equals this, and I'll also say here so it's not going to continue the loop with the parent node, and I'll hit save, and over here I'll say break, and we'll insert this and save, and let's hit preview, and we'll run the loop, and we can see only the first two was selected, and it stopped whenever I hit this, and it broke out of the loop, and we got into the loop finish node. Alright, so that's cool, and obviously you can do a lot more advanced things with just selecting specific rows, so on and so forth, and again, you can achieve these with simple conditions on the table. One more thing to look at is that you get two variables whenever you're working with a loop. You get the loop value and loop index, which is in our instance not so relevant since we get every row and iteration, and we could use that. It's specifically a lot more useful when you're iterating over, especially the value, iterating over a variable. That will give you the value of that variable in the iteration. Okay, so very similar to what we've seen with the table, you can do just the same with the repeated strip. So let's say if I'll have this strip repeated, and I'm just going to throw in there a quick text field, and let me just map some values here from Salesforce real quick. I have a get here already. Simple get, unload, and I'll map my text field to the account name, and I'm bringing back 5 records. And let's see, mapping is good, and I'll add another button here. Make this smaller. We will do the same here, and I'll say I'll loop over my repeat strip. I didn't give it a name, but we'll loop over that one. I have just one, so it's simple here. You always want to go and give it a metadata name. And what I will do over here is simply, let's show a toast message just to show you how this looks, and I'll look at the text from the repeated strip. So repeat text field, and I'll add a continue, So we can see all of them. And let's run a refresh. We get 5 counts, and I'll run my button and I get in my loop every single one in the text field, every single one of the text fields in each iteration. So similarly to a table, each iteration will contain, and you can run actions on a row, either on a table or on a repeated strip. They're very similar in that sense. All right, let's take a quick look at a variable loop. So what I have here is 2 tables with selections, and what I've implemented here is that you can select on the left side, the table is for opportunities, on the right side is for price book entries, which is the object we need to add a product to the opportunity line item object. And what we will do is we'll select multiple opportunities and multiple products, and it will push to Salesforce multiple products for multiple opportunities. Okay, so let's see what I have here. First thing is first, I have a couple of variables, and I have opportunity ID from loop, which will be set from the value of each iteration of the loop, and I have a variable for the opportunity table selection. So I'll give this is a string variable, so I'll give it a better name. And that's that. And now what I'm doing here is, again, very simple loop, and you want to make sure you will not go over 20 pushes in this instance, because if I'll run this for more than 20 times, Titan will stop pushing to Salesforce. Okay, so for each item in my loop element, this still is a power field, so I'll change this to op table selection, and whenever you select a variable to loop over a variable, it will tell you what is the split delimiter, and you can either bring it from a dynamic field or from a static text. And in my instance, the delimiter will be comma, and it could be anything that it's delimited by, either a semicolon or a colon or a dash, whatever you can think of, as long as this is how it's delimited. So that's the loop setup, very simple. And what I'm doing here is for each iteration, I'm setting the op ID from loop variable from the loop value. So set value from on my page variable, setting it from the loop value. And this is when the loop will hold the value of the current split of the string that we pass to it. And what I'm doing here, simple push. So I'm pushing opportunity products. So this is really cool. I'm utilizing one push per iteration, and I'm passing the opportunity ID from that variable we just set from the node before then. And my price book entry ID will be the price book entry table selection. And then I set this to bulk mode, since I don't have to actually run multiple pushes. Titan knows how to do it, so the only thing I have to loop over is one of the many-to-many that I want to create. And then I'm just giving it static quantity and static price. And after that node, I'm just continuing to the next opportunity ID that I've selected. And let's see how this runs real quick. So if I'll select these 2 opportunities, and let's say I want to select these 3 products. So now I will loop over these 2 opportunities, and we'll create 3 products for each opportunity. And I can see this real quick in my integration logs. So I see that I have opportunity product created 3 products for 2 opportunities. And if I'll take this one, for instance, and I'll head over to my Salesforce, and let me put this opportunity product here. I can see that this is related to gene point standby SS, which is this one right here. And if I'll grab this product, we can see that it's related to United Oil Refinery generators. And it's simple as that. But again, always consider the limits, and you never want to loop over too many items. And whenever dealing with tables and with repeated strips, most of the things, almost anything I can think of, can be done with simple conditions, either on the table, on the page, with a repeated strip, with conditions on the actual strip. You can achieve almost anything. And this is how it's done.